All right, welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. This is the first webinar in our series this semester. And these webinars were inspired by our recently released Capacity Gazette, which was released just a couple of weeks ago. And Rebecca is going to put that link in the chat for you guys. It's kind of interesting because we did webinars last year, and then these webinars inspired this Capacity Gazette, and then the Capacity Gazette inspired more webinars. So it's kind of come full circle. And so here we are today. The next two in the series will be focused on supporting English learners in mainstream transfer level English composition. So we'll have a panel of ESL instructors sharing tips on how to support English learners in the mainstream class, as we're seeing more and more students who need that support in the transfer level, mainstream transfer level English composition. And then in December, we have an AB 705 research update on English learners with folks from MMAP and PPIC. So most people are registering for all three, but if you haven't, Rebecca will drop that link in the chat so you can register for those other two. So our focus today comes from kind of a happy accident that Rebecca and I had. So we started working together in that crazy time, which was fall 2020. So this was, after we all went online in the emergency situation in spring 2020, and we realized we were going to be online for the full semester of fall 2020. And Rebecca and I decided that we would kind of pool our resources and work together to write a class. And it was really done just to kind of support each other and do the work together. So we built this class that we're going to be sharing with you today. But what ended up happening was that we were teaching it to two different populations. So I teach kind of the mainstream English composition with co-requisite support, and Rebecca teaches the transfer level composition with ESL support. So in this kind of building of this curriculum and teaching it to these two different populations, we learned a lot about where there were overlaps, what was the same, what was different. And so that's what we are here to share with you today. So I'm going to hand it over to Rebecca to talk about our classes.
Thank you, Summer, and good afternoon, everyone. My name is Rebecca Beck, and I am ESL faculty here at Irvine Valley College. And as Summer mentioned, our course came out from our need to connect as colleagues, and also to kind of think about ways we can give our students an opportunity to think about their own connections. And so the course that we have in front of you shows, the slide that you have in front of you shows the master class. And we call it that because that is the class that counts. And that's what we share with our students. That is their freshman composition course, Writing 1 or English 1A, as some of you may know it. And that is your entry-level freshman comm class. Students read about 400 pages and we write 4 essays. And back in, I believe, 2016, 17, Summer wrote the Writing 302 correc, right? Summer, it was about that time. Support class came to be, and it was a class designed to support students who were concurrently enrolled in Writing 1. And so I created the ESL writing support class after looking at the Writing 302. And so the course that I designed essentially was, again, thinking of how to best support our writers in the Writing 1 class, but giving them the additional language support. And so, as you can see there, we also do 4 drafts, and we also do most of the reading and writing that you'll see in a bit. I do a few extra readings, but we also do the language support. And in addition to that, our students are enrolled in the Writing Center. So they go to the Writing Center to meet with English or an ESL instructor, depending on their need. And they do 24 hours in the Writing Center. And after, in the post-COVID world, we also have them do them virtually. So this is the package that our students enroll. And so the middle course is what Summer and I are going to discuss today. How is it that Summer supports her students in the 302 monolingual course, and how I support our students in the multilingual support class. Next slide, please. So going back to that freshman composition class, this is the set of texts our students choose. So if you look on your left, these are the two required courses and, the two required texts. Brene Brown's Brave in the Wilderness and Dr. Vivek Murthy's book Together. And so how this came to be is Summer had read Brene Brown, and I was in the middle of reading Together, and we just talked and it's like, oh, they could fit. I think it's a nice synergy between the two books. Let's use them. So those are the core texts for our writing class. Those of you thinking, well, how much does it cost? Combined, those two texts are about $23, because I know that's something people think, right? Of course, now zero text costs books and OER. So the students buy the two required texts, plus they choose one of the three. So right now, the three that we have offered our students to choose from are Austin Channing Brown's Black Dignity in a World Made Up for Whiteness, Saigon, and The Best We Could Do. So students pick one of those three, not all three. They just choose one of those books, and that set entirely costs $40. So the class itself then is labeled as a low cost text because of, three books are less than $50. So please, next slide. Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot. Can you go back one? I didn't talk about the excerpts that we use from the Mia Birdsong book, How We Show Up. We have students read one chapter, so we don't have them buy the book. And then we also have them listen to a podcast, and it's Higher Ground podcast by Michelle Obama. So that is the whole set of materials the students need. Now, please go to the next slide. These are the units that students work with. And so you'll see that we have 4 independent units that we do most of the work with, and then one that's at the beginning. So essay 0 essentially is where we do a writing sample just to understand what is the starting point for all of our students. So we do essay 0, they get full credit for that. And we both believe that we want to make sure the students understand that we're going to give them guidance, not going to assess you on a skill that we're going to learn in the class. So that's one of our equitable grading practices that we are happy to have. We see success because students are excited to start the class. They appreciate the guidance. We move forward to unit 1. And then as you see through the units, each one has a key question, and each one also has a set of skills. So the key question for unit 1 is, why are we disconnected? What are steps that I can use to find true belonging, and how do I currently use those steps in my life? They read Brown's book, Brave in the Wilderness, to complete essay 1, and they think about, they summarize, and then they think about how they are using some of the practices that Brown introduces to connect. Unit 2, we begin with Dr. Murthy's book Together, and that's what we're going to present to you later today. Also have a key question. We also have skills. And as you can see, our skills are increasing in higher order thinking skills and writing skills as the semester progresses. Unit 3, that one is based on the memoir that I just said, where students get to choose one of those 3 choices. And the last unit is where we do a little bit of project-based learning, is what I like to call. It's essentially them putting into action what they've learned about the importance of human connection and reaching out to others and building communities of support to help one another out. Next slide, please. And so now we're going to let you guys take a peek at what that looks like. So Summer, go for it.
Okay, so Rebecca's going to drop a link into the chat, and this is a kind of window into our classroom packet. And we're going to do kind of a deep dive into essay 2, but we do have links in there to all of the prompts and kind of an overview of all of the assignments, but we're going to go deep into essay 2. A quick programming note. So we are planning to look at the different kinds of support. How does the support look in the English class and the ESL class? We were going to move through the different kinds of support, writing, reading, and other types of support, looking at English and ESL. But today, excitingly, Joe Biden is coming to our campus at Irvine Valley, and Rebecca has the opportunity to attend. And so she has to leave at 1. And so we've shuffled stuff around a little bit to give her that exciting opportunity. So instead of going back and forth, we're going to do all the ESL assignments so that Rebecca can go be fancy with the president. And then we're going to go into the English assignments, and then I will talk you through those and then answer any questions. Okay, so Rebecca has dropped the window packet, so you guys have that. You can kind of take a peek at it if you want. Everything is linked, that's linked in the slideshow, and we'll also share the slides with you as well. So we're going to be looking deeply into essay 2, and essay 2 is our second assignment. As Rebecca mentioned, in our first assignment, our students read one text. It's Brene Brown's book. The entire essay is based on that one book. This one kind of levels up a little bit, and they focus on 3 different texts. So they read 4 chapters of Vivek Murthy's book, they read that 1 chapter of Mia Birdsong's book, and then they listen to the Michelle Obama podcast. So it kind of steps it up a level in that they're synthesizing 3 texts. They're answering the question here that says, for this assignment, you will analyze the importance of human connection by discussing the social, cultural, and evolutionary causes of loneliness and its impact on individuals, and then explain why it is important for human beings to connect now with one another, arguing why it is important now, maybe more than ever, for individuals to come together and build a more connected world. So we're really kind of synthesizing those 3 texts to answer the question. I see a question in the chat. Are these assignments for ESL 302? So what we're sharing now are the assignments for the Writing 1 class. So these are the exact same in both courses. The Writing 1 class, the college level writing, is exactly the same. We just kind of do the support, sometimes the same, sometimes a little bit differently. So that's what we'll be going into. Okay, so I'm not going to go through all these assignments because you have them in the packet, and we're going to kind of deep dive into a couple of these. So you can look through these as you want in the packet, but these are the way we've divided up the assignments. So what we consider assignments for the main course, these are kind of the main, the kind of assignments that really count in the class. So we have preview assignments, reading logs, we look at sample essays, graphic organizers, we do the final draft, that's the main assignment of each essay, and then do an essay reflection. Again, these are the same in both sections because they're both Writing 1 sections. The assignments that we designate as support, again, a long list here, but we wanted just to make sure they're all in the packet. But they're all in the slideshow, but they're also all in the packet so that you guys can link to them. But these are the assignments that we consider support assignments in the English side. And like I said, we'll do a deep dive into a couple of these. Rebecca?
Sorry, I was typing in the chat. Currently, we're both teaching these courses hybrid. But in the past, obviously during the pandemic, we were both synchronous. So that was that. In terms of ESL support for that writing class, as you can see, we do similar activities, but if you are able to open all the links, you're going to see some of them that are just innate to the language multilingual learner support class. So for example, the reading activity, how to read like a writer. This is an activity that I like to do so the students understand the purpose of reading and unpacking what we typically say active reading. Many of us who have, teach language learners, we have to unpack some of these words. So when they say, well, what do I do? Oh, active reading. Well, what does that look like? And so that's where I come in and I explain, well, active reading is this. And so we spend time understanding what Mike Bunn says about reading like a writer and in this way, I'm identifying the skill in a much more specific way for that language learner to understand. During the language and post-reading discussions that we do, I make sure that I isolate language based on the student need. So again, if you click the link open, you're going to see a slide deck, and each slide deck has a box where the students themselves come up with the language that they want to address as a class because they have noted it in the book. So this is a little bit of that just-in-time language instruction that happens in the classroom post-reading. We also do prompt review assignments, and this is one of my favorite assignments. Summer knows this, but this is the opportunity that I get, and Summer does it too, to unpack the prompt for students. And I think this is really important for language learners, that sometimes we assume they know words like explain and analyze and synthesize. So if you open the link, you're going to see that I ask them to define these words within the prompt review activity. And so this prompt review activity is essentially them explaining to me, hey, this is what I'm supposed to do with this assignment. And so for us, Summer and I laugh because we found this to be a happy accident too. During the pandemic, I got really into the Google assignments, and I was plugging in questions all over the place. And I thought, oh, Summer, let's put it in the prompt. And voila, it came to be an assignment that yielded a lot of questions that we typically see in a first draft. So I know some of you in writing sometimes find yourself giving the same feedback in all of those first drafts. And here we address it from the get-go, right? So if they misunderstood what analyzing is, we address it while they're reviewing the prompt one more time. We also do a lot of in-class, individual conferences. So in my office, I call them teacher connection hours. So they come in, we address language individually, and that is helpful as well. And I'll, in a slide later, we'll see how that looks like specifically. And the last thing I love doing is essay completion celebrations. This is where we all come together and draw images. We post pictures of what we feel like at the end of having written the unit. Why do we do this? Because again, I celebrate the fact that my multilingual writers just wrote an academic essay in English, something I know I wouldn't be able to do in Italian, which is, the third language that I speak. And so I want them to be proud of the fact that they are using their fourth or fifth language, for many of them, in an academic way that is meaningful and is communicative. So I do celebrate that achievement for them. Next slide, please. So key takeaways. Is this my slide? Yeah. Essentially is that both the ESL course and the support course essentially have the same parent course, that we have the same course of outline, the same COR, same content, same assignments, same books, and same formal assignments. So everything in that freshman composition course is exactly the same. The theme is the same, right? Human connection. And again, this is something I discussed in the article. The human connection theme really resonates to our language learner students because there's so many ways in which they can engage with that discussion, connecting to a new culture, connecting to a new school, connecting to a new way of life, connecting to a new friend group, right? So they're able to bring their lived experiences in a way that just kind of shines the light on, you are awesome. You did great in coming in and adjusting and reaching out for those connections that you find that you need and that are important. So next slide, please. Also, as the students are able to look through the process of the way Summer and I have organized our assignments, they see how if they work through all of the activities, they essentially have written their essay. So the sequence of building the reading activities that lead to the graphic organizer, that lead then to the essay, by the time they're engaging with the content they get from the text, they are very comfortable with that language, right? So whatever definition I'm asking them to put in the prompt, asking them to put in the essay from the prompt, by the time they do the draft, they have engaged with that definition 3 times. So they refine that language, which is what many of us teach. in the higher levels of language acquisition, because we're not having students acquire language anymore. We're helping them refine that academic language so they can be successful in history, in psych, or anthropology. As Summer and I created our curriculum, our community of practice also made us better and stronger, right? So I am able to bring in more of the composition, instruction, right? And my background is in English and ESL. So I also feel that I get reminded of what, that composition and rhetoric background that I had, that Summer brings in, and it helps me bring it into language that the students can understand, right? Because I can't just tell my students, okay, well, you just have to figure out the ethos and, do the right rhetorical moves. That's not going to happen, right? And then let's see, one bonus benefit. Yes, we moved through the whole program together. And sometimes we've had students move through one class to the other because we have that. Next slide, please. So this is a few of the more specific ways in which reading instruction support happens in the ESL class. So what you see on the left is the main goals for SA2. They have to develop an argument, they have to analyze loneliness, discuss why human connection is important, explain why humans are in need of connection in the 21st century, and then select outside sources from Dr. Murthy's book and embed them in their writing. So what you see then on your right are activities that I do to help them achieve those goals. And these are activities based on language. So for example, when we create reading discussions in class, right? I'm using the doc camera. They point out language. So if you click the link open, I define loneliness. I defined isolation. I define the key vocabulary they need to then think about it, write about it in the reading activities, so then they can include it in the essay. The next bullet shows how I use cohesive devices, excuse me, not me, how the writer uses cohesive devices that may not be all that obvious to some of our language learners, right? Many of us think back to that little penguin book that had transitions, like moreover, furthermore, in addition to. If you think about how written text in English is formulated, it doesn't always have those. So as native English writers, we have these other ways of connecting ideas. So I point those things out to our students, and I do that through stringing of sentences. And if you want to see what that looks like, please click on the link. So for example, I point out the noun, and then I point out the noun references that the writer makes throughout the development of the idea in that paragraph to show them how the writer comes back to that. So again, these are language specific strategies that have to happen for that language learner to feel supported, because we can't just say, oh, pay attention to transitions, because that's not going to help them. Next slide, please. This is a sample of what I was speaking about earlier, how we have these in-class discussions after we have read, and we play this game called Thin Slides, where I open up a slide deck, all groups choose a slide, and then they work with a specific section of the chapter. And this is, again, where I help them understand key concepts, as you see in the box that says, how has social media made us more disconnected? So here they're engaging with the text, they're practicing the MLA format, they're practicing paraphrasing in a fun, and I say fun because they are working all together on the slide deck. Everyone is kind of pitching in from their reading activities. And again, it's low stakes, which again makes it much more interesting and engaging for them, because they don't have the pressure of, oh, what am I going to get? What's my grade? As you can see on the bottom right, it is the language focus that I was speaking about earlier. These are student driven. We review the language, whether they're words. I love this one where the person wrote, chicken, the egg question, or which comes first? What, huh? So again, these are students responding to how the writer is using language in the text, and they bring that to class. Here's where I introduced them the collocations dictionary, which they love. They now love seeing, which words go together. So those of us in, linguistics, we know collocations are those words that always go together in units that make sense for English speakers. but for multilingual writers, it may not be the case. And so we work with language, as you can see, in a very intentional way. And it is all organic, meaning I'm going to teach them the language that they need to communicate and get their point across in this essay. And it allows them to feel like they are, pedagogical partners in what we're doing, because they bring in the language that they want to find out about. We review it as a class. And again, it gives them some of that, advocacy for, okay, I'm in charge of my own linguistic development here. Next slide, please. And this is all in terms of writing. So as you can see, reading instruction, now writing instruction is a little bit different. Students go through a series of drafts, and I give them feedback through that drafting process. We do workshops on audience considerations, American audience versus non-Western American audience. What are the difference? One is not better than the other. They're just different. I also prepare what I like to call a language toolkit. So I go ahead and I write the essay, and then I look at different language structures that come out, right? That I draw out of those ideas that I wrote in the essay. And then I build those structures for them to help them, right? And again, I want them to feel confident as they're going through the process so they can engage with the content better. So yeah, this is part of, the ESL support of an ESL writing instructor, where I can anticipate some of the language constructions that are going to happen based on the question that the students have. The prompt review assignment, I spoke about it already. This is where I unpack the different goals and the verbs that the students have to understand to engage with the prompt. So if a student sees analyze, but they do not know what it means, they may end up writing something altogether different, right? And so we do lots of things once we're working. We write in class, we do a lot of practice. I have a game called Thesis Idol, where we all, again, pick slides, and it's like American Idol, but for the thesis. This happens after we've done a thesis workshop. So a lot of the writing instruction for these language learners happens in class. Why? Because I'm there with them. So I'm like the guide on the side to help them as they're writing, instead of me saying, go home and write draft 2. Oh, no. We're here for 3 hours. We're going to write the essay. And so that, I think, is something truly valuable, because they have questions as they're going. And instead of them going into Google to ask the question, oh, no, my teacher's here. She can help me. Next slide, please. And then within the drafting stage, I continue to give them feedback. We work with what I like to call the IVC correction symbols, which if you click there, they're just little symbols that describe language, and then they have to address the language. I don't correct the language, but at this point, they're pretty fluent and pretty advanced, right? So it's essentially a way for them to be mindful, to become better editors of their specific language friend, as I like to call them. So I do the one-on-one conferences, as I spoke about earlier. That's where a lot of the grammar instruction happens, right? It's customized for that student. I don't sit in this class and say, okay, we're going to review the present perfect. Everybody, let's look at the slides, and everybody falls asleep. I don't think that's effective. I just address the language that the student needs in that paragraph. And chances are, a lot of the times, the refinement of that editing point is something that continues to happen. So by the time they come to me, sometimes they're like, oh, I know, Rebecca, I'm the queen of verb tenses. Oh, yes, you are, but you don't need the crown. You can fix it. So again, just some of that intentional writing instruction connected to language, or I said that backward, language instruction connected to writing. Because I think language instruction in isolation may not be the most effective, since, again, they don't have the context nor the content to engage with those grammar structures. Next slide, please. And then at the end here, I want to kind of bring in all the things together. If we do have a language issue that the whole class needs a little bit of help with, I do create these grammar little slides. If you click on them, you'll see it's short and sweet. Just like quick tips on addressing the simple past to bring in your experience into a paragraph where you're connecting the past into the present. And again, I'm very careful when I address this, because I don't use the fancy language that linguists or English teachers may say, oh, well, you need to bring the present, because I have high school students who have been auditory learners of English. I can't throw in the grammar book at them because I will lose them, right? So I always come back to teaching language as a function of delivering your writing. And so they're able to then understand why, oh, I use this time word, so I need to use this other time word. And so again, it allows them to feel confident too, that they're using language that they understand. And then I do fun activities again with the language friends. And then we do a shared metacognitive exercise where they get to draw their writing process or their language development process. And it is definitely something that I encourage you to do, which is to kind of, help them understand that language should not hold them back from being effective writers, right? I always say that you can write, you just have to refine a few things to clean up your message, but you have good ideas and you know how to engage, let's do it. So that is essentially the support that they get in the language support class through reading and writing. And is there another slide for me? Oh yeah, no, this one. This is one of my examples. I love this one. I had to take a picture. As I said, when we do fun activities, this was a Padlet that I had from a student that kind of shows his process of writing. And I love the beginning where he's reading the prompt and just his own like metacognitive development of what's happening through his process. And then my favorite is the dog at the end where he's reviewing the language support, right? Like, what? I don't understand what she's talking about. And so I love the way he says his draft 2 is cooked. I think he meant like it was done. I love the way he did nothing, but then I worked on my thesis. So again, this is some of that metacognitive stuff that happens in the support class that allows them to understand themselves as writers in a way that it opens up the communication, like the gateway into college. Like I can talk, I can have a voice and enter the academic conversation. If I look at the steps I've taken and Rebecca says I can do it, so I feel like I can do it. So anyway, all these things come to mind as I look at this because this student did work so hard. So I wanted to share that with you. And I am very grateful to have the opportunity to be with all of you, but I do have to go now.
Yes, you do. You go. I will finish up here. Thank you so much, Rebecca.
Thank you all. Take care.
Okay, so Rebecca did have a couple more slides, but she did have to go. So some of the other types of support she provides, she does a lot of campus community building. So we had this new activity that our classified staff created called an IVC passport, and it's a way to get students to visit different offices on campus. She does a Discord channel with her class that she uses a lot. She does some kind of bite-sized instruction on there. She creates MOI, which is a term that we read about in Murthy's book, which is kind of a community of support. So she builds those into the class where students are put in these support groups to support each other. And this is one of her examples from her Discord page of the bite-sized teaching. Okay, so we're going to move into the English instruction now. And, I think that the thing that I really want to focus on in my side of it is that the support that I'm providing for these students in this Writing One with Support class does include support for English language learners. I typically have about a third, I would say, of my students who need kind of more of that intensive support in language. But in my class, our classes are capped at 25. So I have 25 students and they really all have different needs of support, even within the language learners, different levels of support needs. And so a lot of my assignments are geared at figuring out what each individual student needs and providing that support for them. So whether that's language support or whether that's, support in reading comprehension or support in grammar or writing structure, my assignments are geared toward discovering what that is for each student. And so I'm going to go through the types of support that Rebecca did as well, reading support, writing support, and other types of support, so that you can kind of compare how those are the same and how they are different. So in reading, what I do with my students is we do a reading log for each essay. So in the reading logs, this is something I actually just started doing last semester. So I used to assign a reading activity for each assignment. But what happened was students were doing these activities and they'd have like one for each chapter. And they were kind of like, they had a bunch of them and they'd be in all these different Google Docs. And then I was realizing, like, as I was giving them feedback, we were kind of done with that assignment already. So the feedback wasn't super helpful. So last semester, I did a lot of reflecting on how can I make this a more effective assignment. So what I did was I basically took all of those reading activities and I put them all into one Google Doc that students work on throughout the entire unit. And what I do is throughout the unit, after they're done reading each chapter, I go into the Google Doc and I provide feedback. What's great about using Google Docs is that it can become a conversation. So I'll write a comment, a student might reply to that comment, and then I can answer their question. Sometimes students leave me questions in their Google Doc when they're confused about sections of the reading. And then they don't submit these reading logs for a grade until we are done with the entire reading for the semester. So we've already had this kind of individualized conversation about the reading that helps me to see what each individual student needs. So if it is language support, I can provide that language support within the Google Doc by giving that feedback. If it's comprehension support, I can ask them questions to steer them in the right direction. I've found that grading these feels a lot more authentic because it actually is giving them feedback that they are going to use and input into their essays, and we're really having a conversation. I do a very similar assignment to Rebecca in that I do a lot of slides where students are creating their own slides. And if you've been coming to CAP workshops for a long time, these have kind of, for me, replaced the poster activities that we used to do. What I like about these is that students will drop the links to these PowerPoints right in their reading log so that they have both their work and then the class's work on the reading that we're doing. So you can see my slide is really similar to Rebecca's. The difference is that I don't have a specific section on language where students are writing words that they need support on or phrases. But it's a really similar, just making sure that the students understand the content of the section that we're reading. Okay, so the key takeaways thinking about both the ESL support and the mainstream class, much of the reading instruction that we do is really similar in both of the classes. There's not a huge difference in the approach. It's just kind of those small tweaks for the different populations. So we're both really focused on building comprehension and understanding, finding and analyzing main ideas, answering key questions from the prompt, and finding supporting evidence. So one thing we really focus on is making sure that those reading activities are really directly connected to the prompt so that students are focused on gathering evidence from the text that will be used in their essay. So in that way, the reading logs are really a form of pre-writing. My students, it's funny because we're working on essay 2 right now, and the students are telling me they learned a lot from essay 1 and how they approached the reading log, and they're doing it differently in essay 2 because they saw how important it was and how much they used it. So they're approaching it a little bit differently. In the ESL class, again, there's that targeted language support that's added and layered in, so that students are able to unpack the language and she teaches academic vocabulary. They're building background knowledge and practicing formatting. As I mentioned earlier, much of the work in both classes is focused on discovering what students as a class and then as individuals need to support their reading skills. So I have found in teaching the support class, it's not like you can say, okay, the support's always going to look like this every semester in every class, but you're setting up these assignments to discover what do the students need in order to support them in the way that's going to make them successful. Okay, instruction in writing in English. So really similar to Rebecca, it's kind of this scaffolded approach where we're walking them through the writing process so that we're discovering along the way what support is going to best help them. The writing process really starts with a reading log. It is a type of pre-writing, and it's making sure that they are understanding the text because all of our assignments are text-based. Like Rebecca, I love the prompt review assignment. It's asking them to annotate the prompt and answer questions along the way, because what happens there is we can see, where students are misunderstanding before they're even writing. And again, this is all done in a Google Doc. So a student will ask me a question about the prompt in the Google Doc, and then I answer that question right in the Google Doc, which is super helpful to make sure that they know what we're doing, before we really get started. We do a lot of work on thesis and organization, where students do a graphic organizer. So that's when they take, like, here's everything they did in the reading log, that reading log sometimes ends up being like a 15-page document, because students are adding all of that information in. The graphic organizer is where they pull from that, okay, what from that is going in my essay? So it's kind of a bridge from that reading into the essay. We do a lot of work on thesis and organization, which I'll show you in just a minute. And then I do a lot of work with samples, which I find to be really helpful for all students, but for English learners in particular, because they can see how students talked about the topic that we're writing about. So I have them annotate the former student's essay. I used to do an assignment where I would pick like the best essay in the class, and I'd share it after the students were done, after I graded them. But I realized that that wasn't as helpful as having them look at a sample before they started writing. So they annotate that sample and talk about what they learned by reading that sample, so that they can apply it to their own essays. So this is the way I approach the thesis statement workshop. We take the prompt and we kind of color code the prompt and create a sample thesis, so that they can see how the thesis should match up to the prompt. It's funny because I never tell my students that I used the colors just to illustrate to them that connection. And every semester, about a third to a half of the class starts color coding their essays, because they see that it's helpful. So this helps them think through that connection between the prompt and the thesis. And then we move on to talking about, okay, how does the thesis connect to the body paragraphs? So sometimes when I look at a student's draft, they're like all these different colors, but it's really giving them that visual for how the ideas connect. And again, this is helpful for all students, but it's helpful for English learners too, because it's not just the language that they're picking up, but it's the structure of an American academic essay. And so this helps them see that structure really visually and clearly and think about it in their own writing. I do a lot of individual work around drafting, because again, all of these students need different types of support. And so by building in that individual support, I can support not only English learners, but all of my students with what they need. So we do a lot of drafting in class. I have students submit an intro and plus one body paragraph, which allows me to get through their drafts quickly, but it also allows them to see if they're on the right track, so I can give good feedback. We do some peer samples in class, which is a technique I borrowed from Jesus Limon Guzman, who wrote a blog for CAP, where their students are sharing their intro and one body paragraph, and I provide public feedback, so they see not only the student's draft, but my feedback as well. And then I do one-on-one conferences for students with every essay. Again, I have that time because of the support class. With the final drafts, we often do revision work or editing work in class. So I typically don't have students submit their assignment at home, but I have them submit it in class. This is a time when I can really focus on English learners and all students at that sentence level. So a student, when they're editing their assignment in class, they're asking all of these questions about, does this comma go here? Is this sentence correct? And they want that feedback because they're about to submit their final draft. Okay, so key takeaways looking at the ESL and the English class together. Scaffolding is important for all students. I think that step-by-step structure allows us to see exactly where students get stuck and provide the needed support. So kind of walking them through all the steps, you can see, oh, you're getting stuck here at the prompt. Oh, you're stuck here at the thesis. You're stuck in the editing, so that we can target that support exactly where students need it. Modeling supports students in the English learner section and the mainstream class. Modeling supports English learners and other students as well, as they benefit from the samples as both structural models, and they can see the language that students are using to discuss the subject. And then individualized support is important for all students. That way the instructor can provide targeted support, and it allows the instructor to support the student in other individualized ways. So, our students, whether they're English learners or not, don't need that one size fits all support. They all need that different individualized support. So these assignments allow us to figure out what that is. Okay, other types of support I provide my students. I try to spend a lot of time, because we do have 6 units, really making connection within the class. So like I always open the class with, they're like the mood scale memes. They show like 9 different cats making little faces, and it's like, what's your mood today? And my students share their mood with each other. I talk about my mood. We just make that connection in the beginning. I always do an opening question when I put them into their groups. Like last week it was, if you suddenly had a day off with no obligations, what would you do? So it's just that time to allow them to connect before we jump into that whatever we're doing that day, whether it's reading work or writing work. I do a lot of reflection opportunities. So we do reading wrap-ups where students are reflecting on their reading experience, and not just what they learned from it, but what did they learn about themselves as readers, right? It's really interesting to hear the students, they get really reflective on their process, and they talk about like, oh, I waited until the last minute and I tried to read 50 pages in one night. That did not work. So next time I'm going to read, 10 pages per night. So we really kind of reflect on that. And we do that with the essays as well. And then we do a feedback reflection where when I give them feedback, I give them an assignment that asks them to reflect on the feedback they got and then set goals for the next essay, so that I make sure they're always looking at that feedback. I do intentional work to build community even prior to the semester. So I send a pre-semester getting to know you survey, and I reply to those individually, making sure to connect. I ask them things like, I ask them questions about like, do you have the technology you need for class and those kinds of things. But I also ask them like, what's the best book or TV series you watched recently that you enjoyed? And I kind of try to connect with them individually before the semester starts. I've also started doing weekly check-in surveys at the end of class. So one thing I stole from a community of practice I'm participating in is like a muddy points question. So I ask the students like, what is your muddy point of the reading discussion? And then what I do is I pull those out and I start the next class by going over those. So students know when they share something that they're struggling with that I will address it in class, and then they're more open to talking about it in the survey, so that I'm really using those to help guide the instruction. Okay, so the key takeaways I think when we're comparing the two classes is that that the transfer level English composition class is the exact same in both classes, both the EL version and the mainstream version. This is a rigorous transfer level English composition course that can be taught to both populations. The support, both of them are writing one classes. It's the support classes that have different designations. So we have the ESL support or the English support, but the composition course is the exact same. And truthfully, much of the support is the same. Students in both classes need both group and individualized integrated reading and writing support to develop those academic reading and writing skills. So a lot of what we do is very similar in both classes. And that language support is provided in both classes. So in the English language designated class, it's often provided more through whole group. some whole group, small group, and individual support. In the mainstream class, it's mostly done individually in the context of the standard assignments, because again, not all the students need that same kind of support. Okay, so we have about 10 minutes left. So I'm going to go ahead and end the slideshow here so that I can see you all, and I will open it up for questions. So you can put those in the chat. You can raise your hand, whatever works. Vanessa?
Hey, Summer.
Hi, how
Awesome
are you?
presentation. I'm well. My question, Rebecca's gone, but I'm sure you can answer. The IVC passport, that was really cool because I'm always trying to put together resources. There's a point in my class where I send the students out onto campus to do different things. So I'd love to see that. If it's not somewhere I can go and click on or something, if you could share that.
Yeah, let
yeah.
me give you guys the slideshow. So it's, hold on one second.
And then also the chart where you had the thesis and then the body paragraphs and the highlights and stuff, I thought it was so pretty. So I want to ask, may I steal it?
Absolutely. This is all open for any kind of stealing,
Okay.
or like steal a piece of it, or yeah, it's, you know, I like I said, I did it more to visually show the students in the PowerPoint, and I never have said to them, like, you also should, you know, color code your essay. But it's so funny, every time, like at least a third to a half of the essays are cut. They even use the same colors. Like I get them and they're the same colors. But you know, it really helps them think about that connection, right? Okay,
Yeah.
thesis connects to the prompt in this way. Thesis connects to the body paragraphs in this way. So yeah, absolutely, steal away.
All right, thank you.
Sure. And then yeah, the all the links are live in the PowerPoint, and then they're also all in that window packet. So whichever way is easier. But yeah, that passport activity is great because like I said, it was made up by classified staff, and it helps students go to every office on campus, and there's a little QR code they can scan. And I think they did create an actual physical book that they can take as well, or there's an electronic version.
That's awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Other questions? Are the support courses on ground as well? Yeah, so both Rebecca and I teach this class as a hybrid, which means that we meet one day a week for both the writing class and the support class. So the writing class is a 4-unit class, the support class is a 2-unit class. So that would be in total 6 hours per week. We meet for 3 hours per week. And so it's one piece of the, or one half of the writing class and one half of the support class are in person. We do have versions that are fully in person as well, taught by other instructors, but for Rebecca and I, we are doing the hybrid right now. During the pandemic, we taught it synchronously on Zoom. I myself went through different versions. I did it fully synchronously, and I also did it hybrid like I did now. I'm finding it works really well because it gives me that in-person connection with the students, but it allows them, you know, a full week every time to get reading done, to get writing done, and then come into class. So I'm liking the hybrid quite a bit for this class. Other question? I thought I saw someone with their hand up. Oh, Lisa?
Hi, thank you. I just had a question that's more technical in terms of how, are you both English instructors, or is she an ESL instructor? Is the class with the ESL support housed in the English department? These are more the kind of
yeah,
we're having.
So I am English. Rebecca has dual minimum quals, so she has ESL and English both. And so the writing class is housed in the English department. My support class is housed in the English department. Her support class is housed in ESL.
Okay, so you guys have separate English and ESL departments too?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, that's right.
Thank you. That's helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, you know, one thing I've really enjoyed in working with her is seeing that side of it. Like I've learned
Mhm.
so much about supporting, ESL students in my own class from working with her. And she talked about, she tells me that she learned a lot about more focus on teaching, transfer level comp. And so it's been a great relationship to learn both of those sides. I think we both improved in serving our populations by working with the other person,
Right. Oh, for
because
sure.
we had so many. I mean, that summer that we wrote the course, we were meeting all the time. And then the semester we taught it, we would meet, I think we met weekly or at least every 2 weeks to just go over everything. And she'd be like, oh, I did this in my class. And I was like, oh, I'm going to do that in my class now. So, and then we refined the assignment. So it's really been great for me personally. And I think, Rebecca said the same thing as an instructor, to work with someone like that. It's been super helpful.
But she can be in both departments, right? Are there any ESL faculty that are also teaching the English 1A transfer?
Currently, we have enough ESL faculty with dual minimum quals. So we do have 2 sections of the writing one with ESL support.
Okay.
So Rebecca teaches one, another instructor teaches one, and that instructor also has dual minimum quals. We've tried to offer up to 3, and those didn't fully fill. So 2 has been about the right spot.
And you've never done something where you have a team like, the 6 units, but they're taught by 2 different people.
No, we
Yeah.
just, yeah, it's all the same instructor. Right. And again, Rebecca and I like fully did this on our own. This was just like, oh, we need help. Like,
right. Of course.
Fully online course. And so we're both interested in the same topic and teamed up, and it was really helpful.
Great. Thank you.
Okay. Is the ESL support course transfer level or just the writing? No, the writing course is transfer level. Both of the support courses are pre-transfer, both the ESL and the English one. Any learning community approaches? We just got, we used to have the Anna Peasy grant and we didn't have it. Then we just got it again. And we are working on some learning communities through that, but we currently don't have any. Any additional questions? We have a couple minutes left. Amanda?
Thank you, Summer. It's just what a wonderful presentation, and the support that you and Rebecca are providing is incredible. And I love just how individualized it is. And also loving the integration of the reading and writing skills together. When you start a unit of study, do you begin with introducing the prompt, or at what stage does that usually occur?
Yeah, I always start with the prompt and then we go back and back and back and back to it. Like usually what I do is on the first day, we do the prompt, we do some preview activities. And then we, what I've done is like on a day when we're doing a chapter, like talking about a chapter, I always start with the prompt and kind of highlight the part of the prompt that chapter is addressing. And then if you look in the reading log, I can't think off the top of my head right now what I call it. It's like a kind of like a preview of like, or like the chapter focus. So before each reading activity, I write a little blurb about like what that chapter is focusing on and how it connects to our bigger goal. So it's really important to me that my students see the connection between all the work we're doing and then the high stakes assignment. Like I want them to see that this activity we're doing helps me in this way. And I think through the first unit, they like kind of see it, and then the light bulb goes off, and in unit 2 and beyond, they're like, okay, when I do this in the reading log, it can go here in my essay, and they become a lot more invested in doing that work because they see that connection. So it's really important to me to show them that. So we're constantly going back to the prompt. I'm like, we're going to look at the prompt together. Like we know the prompt. So we're doing it all the time. We're just about out of time. Any last minute questions? Odd question. How can the collective we encourage more male instructors to join this movement? That is a big last minute question that I do not have an answer myself for, but I appreciate that we are thinking about this. So Thank you all so much. We did record this, so we will put this, the slides, and the window packet up onto the CAP website in the next few days. I appreciate you all giving us an hour of your Friday, and we will see you all soon. I hope you can join us for the next webinar as well.
Summer, one quick question.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Are the support classes for both English and ESL, are they considered remedial classes?
They're pre-transfer. Yeah. So they do not earn transfer
So
credit.
do you call them remedial classes though?
I wouldn't call them that. I'd call them support classes, but they don't earn transfer credit.
Okay.
So they're really, I mean, I wouldn't call them remedial because they're really designed to support the content of that transfer level class. They're not designed to teach kind of missing skills, right? They're designed to support students to succeed in the transfer level class.
Awesome. Great explanation. Thanks.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you all. Goodbye.